And welcome to another Biddle on May 30th, 2020. How's everybody doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Hey,
Doing good.
just
Yeah,
fine.
good tonight.
Well, I think we're live because YouTube's not giving me any hard times as of yet. But we, this week, have been trying out Ubuntu Budgie 2004. And
Sign. Open sign.
Opening says open sign. You're welcome.
So there you go. We're open for business.
We're open.
So we've been trying out Ubuntu Budgie 2004. We were hoping to have Dustin Krysak from Ubuntu Budgie on here, but he's a little busy right now, so we're going to continue on without him, and we're going to give our opinions regardless. So, but before we go any further, I do want to mention, for those of you who were listening to the Linux Spotlight episode, I do have an explanation of what happened. Maybe not, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation that we'll talk about in the second hour. But the audio on that was not quite right. So there you go. All right. So Ubuntu Budgie 2004. So I installed it, and I'm going to leave my opinion for last because I have a hard time trying to find things that are wrong with it. So if anybody wants to start out, just raise your hand, and you can jump in on Ubuntu Budgie 2004. Musical Coder, you are the first, sir. Jump in.
Well, I started installing it Thursday, and I've been using it on my laptop since then. What I'm displaying on, what I'm going out over right now, and I kind of agree with you. This is really a sleek-looking desktop. I'm very happy with it. I haven't dug into the nuts and bolts of it too much yet, but I've installed a couple snap things. I've installed a couple things through the package manager. I've used the software center it comes with. Overall, I'm very, very happy with this.
Very nice. Well, I can tell you that for a long time, I said that Ubuntu Budgie was a modern-looking desktop with great defaults. But there was a few things that kept me from running it as my daily driver, okay? And some of that is like, I guess, petty stuff, you would say. Like, for example, I was never a fan of the original menu that was in Budgie. And Dustin kept asking me, because we would always talk on Telegram and whatnot, and he would say to me, well, what would it take for you to run Budgie on a daily basis? And the first thing that always came to mind was that menu. And even though, menus may not be as important as they used to be, they are still an important part of the whatever operating system you're running. I utilize docs, and obviously Budgie has a doc, but still the menu is an important thing. And it just was really, really lacking. And a few months ago, Dustin had messaged me on Telegram and said, hey, we're working on a new applet. David is forking the elementary menu over to work on Budgie. And I was like super excited. And I can tell you that this menu doesn't say, okay, now everybody run Budgie because it's got a new menu on it. It just adds one more thing that was a barrier before that I could say, well, that would probably be a reason why I wouldn't. That is no longer a barrier. That menu is absolutely gorgeous and awesome, and I love it. All right, who is next? Colin, sir, how are you?
Good, thanks, Rocco. Actually, Tony had his hand up first if he wants to go first.
It's really not about first or
All
second.
right, okay.
It's just about
that's fair.
We're all gonna get our talk in. So
that's fine. I didn't want to talk about Ubuntu Budgie itself because that is just in itself is awesome and a good distro. What I did want to talk about is the window shuffler, which used to be an applet that you added. Now it's integrated into the system and it's within the menu itself. And what I like about it is not just the fact that you can open up this grid and click a window and put it in the corner and click the grid and whatever, but it's the window, it's the keyboard controls that come along with it. So, like for example, if you press Control Alt, and if you got a keypad with your 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, and all that, you know they all represent the corners and the sides and all that with Control Alt. So 1 would be bottom left hand corner, 3 would be bottom right hand corner, and so forth. So I find that absolutely amazing and so simple to use to be able to quadrant your windows very quickly. So I just wanted to talk about that because I found that really a really nice touch on the window shuffler.
Well, there's a lot of things that Budgie gets from, you know, obviously from Solus creating Budgie. But the applets are something completely different. They are not in Solus. And the applets, some of them have become really, really good. And the window shuffler is awesome. And as you said, like it brings that almost like the pop tiling. It brings that same effect to it, to where like I sat here and I was playing around with it, opened up the window shuffler and popped in my windows where I wanted them and done. And then I could just go on with my work. And that is a really, really good feature.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to mention, Colin?
No, that was pretty much it because, you know, the rest of the system, well, the fact that it installed well, it runs well, it looks nice. It's, you know, it's got all the pre-installed themes as well. So there's some really, really nice touches there, I must say. So, you know, other people might have some other things to say. So I just thought I'd pinpoint a particular conversation there. And, you know, Budgie itself runs well and it's nice. You can't knock it, really, to be honest. So it's a not. They've done a really, really nice job. Let's put it that way.
Yep. Bill?
Yes, sir. Why are you laughing?
Never mind. Bill, did you try Ubuntu Budgie this week?
Yeah, I've used Budgie. There are a couple really things I want to point out. First of all, the Ubuntu Budgie forums are a great resource. There are a lot of people there. Foss Freedom, who is the lead developer, he is often in the forums. So you have a really good chance of getting direct interaction with the team if you have an issue. I think it was 1904, they made the decision to add Nemo as the file manager. And I think Nemo and Kaja are the two best file managers. But they're very similar and they have a very similar heritage. But adding Nemo to Budgie really gives it something that stands out even from Solus. And the applets that they have that we've just talked about, it gives it a little bit of a shine that it's really, really nice and it pops. There's great support. Their website, they've really done a really good job on the website directing you what to do. And those are little things, but those are really, really big. And they've also implemented a welcome screen. Mm-hmm. And the welcome screen with the browser selector, you know, they've really gone out for, if you're going to pop this into your system, be a new user, helping you get a good experience. And I think that's really one of the top things when you're looking at it. You get a really nice experience out of the box on Budgie. And I think they've done a great job.
I agree. That welcome screen is on par with any other welcome screen out there. They have done a tremendous amount of work inside of it. Now, I did run into a couple issues inside the welcome screen itself. So the first time I went to install programs from the welcome screen, because it offers you a little box to install, they didn't show being installed after it went through the installation process. That was the first time I opened up the welcome screen. Now, after rebooting and the second time, it was fine. And there was one other thing about the welcome screen. When I went to install Google Chrome, and I can't remember if it was when I opened it from there or if I opened it from the actual extras, but installing Google Chrome, it had a Gpg key error, so it failed basically. And I ended up having to reboot, remove the repository, pull it out, and put it back in and try it again. But it did actually go through then. So those were the two issues with the welcome screen and those little extras that they put in there.
I mean, Rocket, you had an error. Did you happen to report a bug on that?
I did not report a bug on that, sir.
I mean, that could have just been a time issue. Like, obviously, if you just took it out and put it back in and it worked, it just could have been.
That's what I'm saying. Like, those type of errors are not, I don't think those are, because I'm not going to be able to reproduce that error. Like, there's no way I can reproduce that. So there's no sense of me going and reporting it to them when they're going to ask me, well, how'd you do it? And I'm going to say, I don't know. And then I try to reproduce it and I can't. So that's kind of cute.
Well, just, hogging the time and talking about the welcome screen, I really like the fact that they give the multiple layouts. And it's obviously, something that Ubuntu Mate does. And it's something they have. And they have a beautiful set of default layouts you can choose from. I mean, they have some absolutely gorgeous layouts. So if you're looking at Budgie and you haven't spent any time in the welcome screen, I urge you to go look at it because they've done a lot of work on it, and it's really nice.
Yeah, but dude, it's not like, well, first of all, you're not hogging the time. We're all here to talk about Budgie, okay? Second of all, it's not, this is something that, okay, me as a user, I don't need the welcome screen. But it sure is nice to have the welcome screen there. And it is there for people who do need it, not only just need it, but enjoy it. It's like the Ubuntu Mate welcome screen. You don't need that there, but man, is it really nice to have it there. And man, does it help out people that are not familiar with everything. So like maybe we're not the target audience for the welcome screen, but it sure is nice to have a nice one there.
Yeah, I've gotten used to having welcome screens on every distro. I love them. Absolutely love them. All right, Daniel, what did you think of Ubuntu Budgie?
So I installed it the other day. First, I tried it in a VM, which didn't work out too well. I don't know if it was some way that I had the VM set up. It was just using VirtualBox, but I picked the, it just seemed to stall on me. So then I just installed it to a spare hard drive and that went fine. So it could have just been some weird, maybe I clicked some weird configuration on my virtual machine. I like it. It's very clean. It's very nice. Everybody says the same thing. It's very modern looking, kind of stays out of your way unless you need it. I do like the whole layouts thing. That's pretty cool. The welcome screen is definitely on par with a lot of the other ones I've seen, especially like the Mate one. Those are always, I could see for a new user how that is extremely helpful. I even use it from time to time when I have it. Like my main rig is Arco Linux, and I left their little welcome screen on too, because it's just nice to have it pop up just to give you your quick little whatever right in your face, just to make sure. I guess so. It amazes me the work that these guys put into some of this stuff and how they make this stuff just look so good and so clean. For me, not really. I find myself, it's weird. The more I get into Linux, and maybe this is just the Linux, maybe this is just the more you use it thing. Maybe it's just the geek in me, but the more I get into Linux and the more I try distributions, the more after spending about an hour with the base distribution, I've basically torn it apart and all right, going back to my tiling window manager, going back to my configurations, downloading all that stuff. I sound like Derek, I know, from DistroTube. Yep, any distro, don't care. I'm just going to download my configs and off and running and I'm going. That's it.
Distros don't matter, right?
But it's funny, the longer I play around with Linux, it's just because I spend so much time getting it configured to look the way that I want it. And the fact that doing it that way, I can actually make pretty much every distro do exactly what I want it to do is awesome to me. But it does not detract at all from the work that these guys put in
to any of these DEs, and Budgie is just phenomenal. And I thought Budgie was cool when the Solus guys first created it way back when. So definitely like it as a distro, but I've already hacked it up.
Well, the nice part about not downloading or running a script or something to do all your setup is you do get to kind of pick through the little nuances, see the little changes, see the little tweaks. I'm with Rocco on the it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. The menu, the fact that they have the other menu there, which don't click on it, just don't.
It's not needed.
It's not needed. It's like Windows 95, 8, I don't know, whatever it is. It's got that nice GNOME feel. But then as I was playing with it a little bit, I go, boy, I wish it did this like GNOME or like Pop, or I wish it did this. And it was just those little things that I'm like, it's really good, but it's just, I wanted my extensions for my GNOME extensions. Plank is pretty good, but it's not, what's the
Dash to dock?
Dash to dock. It's not dash to dock. I run 3 monitors. I want dash to dock on every monitor because I'm going to end up on that monitor and want to start something. And now I'm running on Budgie today. Like when I test, I only go bare metal and set it up and get it working. But yeah, I'm missing dash to dock. Beautiful. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, Daniel. You kind of know what you like. All right, Jinda. How did you think? What did you feel about Ubuntu Budgie?
I have to say it made my laptop look not like the pile of junk that it is.
That's a good way to put it.
I'm serious. I mean, I guess that's the best compliment I can give. I mean, I got a $400 laptop, and I'm like, ooh, this looks nice now. It's really, really well groomed and polished, and would I ever use it? Probably no. But what does that have to do with anything? It doesn't mean anything. You can't take it away from how nice this looks and how everything is so perfect. If you're nitpicky and want to point out pixels or something silly, you're not going to find anything wrong with this. I'll
be the judge of that.
Okay, all right. It wasn't a shot at you, Rocco. I mean, I can't, I'm not the kind, I'm a KDE, XFCE kind of guy. So, to me, this was a lot different, and it would take a lot longer to get used to than I thought it would, because it's so gorgeous. I mean, I couldn't believe how nice this looks, and how, like you said, modern was a good word for it.
Yep.
Yeah. It would just take me a while to get used to it. Like when I was like opening a couple of programs, I go, okay, where are they? I had Alt Tab to find them. I was like, okay, where did they go? They're running. I know they're running. There have to be an icon somewhere here telling me they're running. It took me a bit of time to get used to it. And I think it's more me being, old and gray bearded and not wanting to learn.
It's just more you being a KDE fan than a GNOME fan. That's all it is.
More XFCE than KDE.
Or sorry, XFCE.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah. I mean, other than that, I wish every desktop was this well polished. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Mate was shiny and nice. Sorry. I think this is super shiny and nice.
It is.
All right.
It is really nice, dude. And it comes with, like just the little touches that, like, for example, the panel is transparent. But by default, like that's just something, okay, that may be something superficial, but that goes a long way in making a distro or an operating system look polished. And it's those little things. And when I say about Budgie having insane defaults, I'm talking, panel at the top, menu at the left, whatever you need, basically, on the right-hand side, and a dock. Those are what most people, okay, so that's not what everybody uses. I mean, you could go down the line and everybody could say, well, I have the panel over here or I have this over here. But for the majority of people, that's what people expect to see when they look at it. Now, You know, we could go into specifics about arguing about which one is different, like panel to the top or bottom, but I'm just saying as an overall picture, it is a modern-looking, sane default, awesome distro.
It's actually, Rocco, it's actually dynamic by default. So if you full screen a window, it actually goes dark, which is what GNOME used to be like. Yeah.
Yep. But in this, there's no extension needed. You know what I mean? And that's what sets this apart from, like, this is all by default. This is out of the box. Like, when you get a GNOME installation, unless somebody has done it like Pop! OS or, you know, unless somebody has revised it or added extensions to it, you're not going to get that kind of stuff. You're going to have to add it.
Yeah, you're limited a little bit on your customization because of that, but it's really good what they've done by default. So there were some little nitpicky things. Like I said, I'd rather have Dash the Dock than Plank, but Plank's fine. The fact that Plank existed and they incorporated it and it was working, it's great. The little things, the little applet at the top that shows you all the apps in your workspace that are open. I don't know if you added that, or I think I had to add that, or maybe it was default.
No, it's default.
It's beautiful. It shows me I have 2 Zoom windows, 2 Chrome windows. I got my Zoom, you know, it's amazing. That's really neat. And then to be able to just jump to your next space, you know, there's some little things that I wish Pop would do, which is the one thing that on the applets that I do miss is actually clicking on the calendar and seeing it drop down. Yeah.
Having to open it in a separate window is okay. I mean, it becomes a huge applet, and that's cool. But I do miss just a quick reference calendar right there, and I believe they do have an applet in there to add a quick reference calendar that you can drop down.
Rocco, you're missing Raven though. Raven offers you that whole calendar thing.
You're right. It's just muscle memory to go up to the middle to the middle and click on the time. But yes, you're right. It is in Raven. Good point.
And there are some weird things with the applets too, though. Like so I don't know. Does I think by default it has like the date and time kind of in the window on the bottom right of your main desktop. So I added the weather one. I thought, oh, this is cool. Let me add the weather one. Well, I did that when I was at single monitor. I went to 3 monitors, and now my weather one was over on this monitor, like in the middle of the screen. And I'm like, oh, what's going on there? So to actually move it, you know, you got to set the pixels, but it counted all the way from my first monitor to my second monitor to my third. So if I wanted it on the second monitor, it's at like 5,050 by, because it's counting them instead of just going, I'm on this monitor, I want the applet on this monitor. Mm-hmm. Those were kind of, they felt a little like janky, you know, where you're like, oh, what? Finally, I figured it out. You know, I had to do math.
Like, Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm kind of like distracted. Tyler, are you going to share with us? Or?
I know. I was trying to get through it. I mean, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Don't unmute. We don't want to hear it, but wow. Yeah. Whatever it is.
So, all right, let's go. Let's move over to Tony and see what great information Tony can give us.
Tony had this installed way before last week, I think. So
Tony had it installed like 6 months ago before this even started. He went back in time and did it.
I've been running it for a while, on and off in the past, and I absolutely love it. There was only 1 or 2 things I didn't like about it, and they fixed that with the new menu. As I think it was Joe that said, ignore the other menu system, don't even click on it because it's just horrible. I can't hardly fault it really, and I am quite nitpicky at looking for things. But the only thing I've found on it that's a problem is that when you need to unlock something, you get a little padlock icon pop up in the dock. That's never clear and sharp. It's always fuzzy.
Like, what do you mean when you need to unlock something?
I can't remember what it is. There's certain things you do that a little padlock pops up in the dock.
Huh. Okay.
And it's never clear and sharp. It's always fuzzy and sort of like out of focus, distorted. None of the other icons are. It's the only one. But other than that, I can't fault it. Everything else works perfect. I absolutely love it. And I could use it as a daily driver, but I'm not. Because I did what I promised I would do last week and give Ubuntu a fresh go. And I've been running it ever since last Sunday and absolutely love it. It works fine now. The one and two little niggles I had don't seem to have occurred since the fresh download. But if I had to choose one, it would be a toss-up at the moment between Ubuntu and Budgie, because they're both very good.
Yep, agreed.
Outstanding. So we have Daniel Stevenson. So you want to tell us about your experience with Budgie?
So I really liked Budgie, and I basically ran it all week, which is not something I did with Ubuntu last week. I found myself like having to reboot into Tumbleweed for certain things. But since it was another Ubuntu, I was able to use. Hi, Richard. I was able to use the same full disk encryption procedure that I talked about last week, where you can get your boot partition encrypted, and then pull down all of my configs and stuff from GitLab, and I, just did all my work there. I was playing with Tilix a little bit, and that's really cool. However, I'm a Tmux person already, so it was like, learn some new keyboard shortcuts, and then realize, oh, well, actually I can't use the same shortcut to jump across a Tilix split and a Vim split like I can when I'm using Tmux, so I lost a little bit of integration, but it's pretty great. And if I wasn't already using a terminal multiplexer, then I think I would have it installed on Tumbleweed right now. Apart from that, theme was gorgeous. Oh yes, so I'm I already gave it away a second ago there, but I am a Vimmer, and I prefer to have my escape on mapped to caps lock, so that way I don't have to like reach way up there. And putting it, so in Plasma there's a setting where you can just check a box, and it does that. And then if I'm not using Plasma, then usually there's like a certain command you can paste into a startup file and it would work. But then I kept trying various startup files and none of them actually worked on Budgie. Like I tried to put it in .x profile. I tried to put it in it's like a systemd one, and I tried to put it in in a lot of places, and eventually I found out that you can install GNOME tweaks, which does pull down the whole GNOME shell, but it's fine. You just install GNOME tweaks, and then there's a similar option that like the one in Plasma, to enable that option in GNOME or Budgie. So yeah, that was worked out.
Very nice. Well, I can say that like the last couple of weeks that we've been talking about other distros, high DPI for me. And Joe, I don't know if you touched on this or not, but I had no issues with the high DPI, with the exception of having to log in and log out and log back in, which I'm not sure why, which distros and why it is that some you have to log out and log back in and some you don't. That's a small minor gripe. But other than that, I had no issues with the high DPI as far as whatever the mouse cursor is, it's going to be the right size. All of the windows and all of basically the whole thing resizes to the right settings. Did you have any issues, Joe?
Yeah, actually. So I was excited because I knew it had where I could scale everything, fractional scaling. Because one thing, as much as I love Pop, one thing I have run into is my 3-screen setup here is a 4K, a 2K, and a 1080. And you can only go 200% or 100% system wide. So everything's way too big on the 1080 and everything's way too small on the 4K. So I usually just change my 4K to a 2K and then it's fine. But the fractional scaling is great, except I couldn't get it. 150% is the only one I could get to work. The 125 is what I really wanted on my 4K. Wouldn't work, but again, I'm really nitpicking. The 150 worked, but high DPI worked great out of the box. I mean, I booted in, it was there, it knew what I was looking for. It read my monitor setup. That was my only nitpick, but I was really excited about it because I thought, oh, good, fractional scaling. I can tweak each monitor individually, and you could, but again, the scaling. And I know it's still under, it's kind of new. It's under development still, but that was it. Yeah, really good experience, high DPI wise.
Well, the other thing that I want to say is Bill had touched on it earlier. It has the second best file manager on the planet in Nemo. So that is a super plus for Budgie. And, obviously it's not Dolphin, but it is it runs a second close place, a close second place. How's that? Other than that, dude, I could sit here and go on and on about the applets and about all of the things they've added to this specific release. Cause like I said, in the past, it's been close, but not there. I don't think Budgie gets the attention that the other flavors get. I think a lot of the other flavors get a lot of the attention, and sometimes Budgie is kind of left out. Maybe that's just a personal take, and maybe you see it differently, but man, they put a lot of good stuff in this, and a lot of effort goes into it, and it really looks good for this release.
I'll tell you that maybe part of that, at least from my standpoint, because when we said, hey, we're doing Budgie next, I was like, that's the almost GNOME. Like it's GNOME, but it isn't. Last time I tried it, it's been probably a year, or maybe I had tried Solus. I can't remember, but I was like, I don't know why this exists, because at the time it wasn't GNOME and it wasn't KDE, or it was just kind of this middling thing, and it was missing some key things. And I just go, who wants to do this? But now they've refined it, and it's become something great. And I'm excited. I'm leaving this on the disk. I'm going to stay living in it. I made a full work machine out of it that I boot into with VMs and everything. And I'm going to keep it around, because I want to find what's broken, if that makes any sense. I want to keep going until I hate it.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I didn't have Pop! OS on this machine as the main distro, Budgie would be my next choice. There's no question about it. And like I said before, there were a few things that might have stopped me from running it. There's nothing right now that I can pick out that would stop me from running this.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to get in on Budgie? Colin, you still have your hand up, but I don't know if that's because you have more to say about Budgie, or you just didn't lower your hand.
No, I thought you lowered the hand. I didn't. I've never lowered.
Well,
the
I
hand
lower
before.
the hand when people don't lower the hand, Colin.
I did no.
I'll lower your hand, Colin. It's that down under thing. We don't know where the hands
the toilets
are.
flush the other way. Guys,
see, this is
come
how
on.
the magic works behind the screen. You pull the curtain
He
back.
lowers the hand.
And look, you raise the hand, and when you're done, you lower the hand. If you don't lower the hand, we lower it for you. How's that?
I didn't. I've never done it. All right.
This is inside baseball stuff here.
Colin, could you raise your hand so we can lower it?
All right, Chris has his hand up. Chris, you want to talk about Budgie?
Yeah, just a couple things. I really did like. Come on, hand. There it goes. Well, I click on the hand to lower it, and it just stays there. I don't know if it's because of my slow CPU or what, but anyhow, with Budgie, I found that overall, I'm really liking it. Few quirks here and there. I really don't like the version of Nemo that I have here, because I can't figure out how to configure it other than going into the dot file. And I don't know which dot file it uses. And then the what was it? The other thing that I noticed I really miss is I don't have any icons on the bar up top for representing what's open.
Yep.
I mean, I can't believe how much of that I've become dependent on. With Cinnamon on Fedora, which is what I'm running on my production machines. Yeah, running Fedora on production. I don't know, but anyway, I have the icon with the underline showing me what's open or running, and I can switch to that application. I've just gotten so used to that, so interrupts the workflow a little bit. But let's see here. Was there anything else? No, I really don't have anything else in regards to that, other than it's a very fine. I like the Tilix. I was using Tilix, but I've been using Tmux on my virtual terminals, like when you do Control Alt F 2, 3, 4. That one I use Tmux all the time, but with Tilix on the terminal emulator off the GUI, it works. I kind of appreciate that, because now I can split my screen. Like I had like 3 different files I was looking for information on, and I was able to split the screen into what I needed and pull that information out pretty quick, and that was much appreciated. So, and that's about all that I had to say about it.
Well, anybody else have anything they want to add to Budgie?
I'll add one more thing. I've used Budgie off and on a few times, and I mean, I always find myself comparing it to Solus, because that's where Budgie had started from. And I have to say that I think that the direction that Ubuntu Budgie is going is I find it much better. I like it, mainly because there's just little quirks I find with Solus with the package management, and how there's a lot of third-party apps, and it takes forever, it seems like, for them to install and everything. And I just like how, because it's based on Ubuntu Budgie, you got everything there. Everything loads up, installs quickly. I also found, and I don't have any like statistics or anything, but it seems to me that Budgie now seems to be a lot snappier than what it used to be in the past. I would like it, but it always seemed like it was, compared to other desktop environments, there's always somewhat of a resource hog. And it's, to me, when I tried it out this week, that was the one thing that caught my attention the most. To me, it seemed like it was much snappier and more responsive.
Yep. Well, on the test machine that I have, it's a pretty powerful machine, so I don't notice those types of things. And that's good. It's good feedback to hear, Dave. Appreciate that. All right,
Rocco, let me
go ahead.
Yeah, I want to jump in for a couple of things that Chris mentioned. So I think that you needed to add the task list to your panel to get what you were trying to find with the applications. And if you're using Nemo with Budgie, if you right-click on the bottom bar, it's going to pop up where you can get to your preferences and make all your changes and settings and configs that you'd want to do. So that's a little bit different than I think you normally would find it in a lot of places, but it does exist. And
wait, were you trying to get into the preferences of Nemo?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I did the same thing, and I looked, and I'm like, where is that? Because usually there's that extra little button, or if you right click somewhere, you can find it. But I just hit Alt, which brings up the actual file menu, and then I could get to the preferences. So
you can also right click on any free space up where the menu normally is, and that'll open up the menu on Nemo as well. So yeah, it seems to be hidden by default.
Well, it's just like the the applications that you were talking about, Chris, and that's why I say it's a modern looking desktop, because it doesn't have those application windows there. And, you know, a lot of the modern looking desktops, you know, to me, they don't. Like, they have it in a icon based dock, basically, like GNOME, where your open applications are over on the left on your dock. So I think that's what they're going for, but you can add that functionality back in if you want to by an applet.
Yeah, because it's based off what GNOME?
It's
GNOME
based
3
off of GNOME, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you'd have to get the plugin for it, which I didn't even think of doing.
Well, you can't install extensions like you would GNOME, but they have applets that the Budgie team personally makes, and I think they said it's written in. Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. Did they say it was a lot of the apps are written in C?
I can't give you an honest answer on that.
Because it's one of the reasons why the Solus team didn't want to incorporate the applets, because they didn't.
It's written in Python.
Is that what it is? It's Python. You're right, Colin.
And they don't like Python in Solus.
You're right. Yeah. So yeah, that's the reason why the applets aren't in Solus, and I think to me that's kind of a mistake, because the applets are really, really good. So, all right. Anybody else want to add in? Okay. Well, that is our take on Ubuntu Budgie, and I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get to talk to Dustin, because I'm sure he would have wanted to relay some features that we are missing, overlooked, or didn't see, or whatever it may be. But I think we pretty much covered everything that you could cover from our end, from our perspective. And I just want to thank David, Dustin, and everybody else on the Ubuntu Budgie team for an outstanding 2004 release. 2004 itself is a great base. Ubuntu Budgie 2004 is an absolutely awesome release.
This is the most positive review we've ever had.
Maybe not the most positive, but it is better than the last couple that we've had.
Been a rough couple weeks in Ubuntu land.
It is. It's been a rough couple weeks. Speaking of Ubuntu land, our distro talk is what we're calling it nowadays. So we did Budgie. We've done regular Ubuntu, Ubuntu Mate, Ubuntu's Ubuntu, and now Budgie. So the next one on the list for next week is Ubuntu. So if you got, I'm sure Tony's already got it installed. Yes, I know that, but
I know playing around with development earlier.
Mitchell in chat, I think, said that he has it installed already, but he's been playing around with it, so it's not like he did it for the talk or anything. But
so Rocco, do we have somebody in Biddle that works on Ubuntu?
Well, now that you mention it, Bill, there's a guy. You know, a guy that is not here tonight that is busy working overtime on the weekend.
Oh,
because that's what he does. Dan Simmons, awesome dude. Usually here every single week to help out, and miss him dearly. You know, and of course, you know, I can't say that without saying that I miss Zeb and Eric as well, because they've been absent because of you know, life situations. But you know, we have people help out. We have people on Biddle, and they come and go, and you know, you get to have them be here, and you get to talk to them every week, and it's almost like, you know, they're expected to be here. But this is life, dude, and sometimes things don't happen that way, and you know, miss them. So yeah, Dan is working. Zeb and Eric hopefully will be back at some point with when their life issues settle down, and I see Tony's showing off his installed Ubuntu. But yeah, so Ubuntu next week, and Dan Simmons I'm hoping will be here for that, and maybe, who knows, maybe we can get somebody else from the team as well. So
I just told Simon Quigley.
Well, there you go. Maybe Simon will be back, but maybe not, because he hasn't fixed Pulse Audio yet. So
I have to say, Rocco, when it comes to Ubuntu, whenever I make a video on Ubuntu, it seems to generate interest. So there seems to be a lot of people out there interested in Ubuntu, surprisingly. Yeah.
Well, I got to say that it's probably, I mentioned Budgie doesn't get a lot of hype, basically, out of the flavors. But Ubuntu is in that same group where it doesn't quite get the notice that some of the other flavors do. So I'm excited to try it out. Now, is this the first, Bill, help me out, Dan's not here. Is this like the first release of them using something else other than what they were using before, or what?
Are you talking about going to LXQT?
Yeah.
This is their first LTS release with LXQT. Yeah. So their first release was 1810, I believe, because 1804 was the LTS release, and I think they started the journey to LXQT, and this is their first LTS release. And just to point out, LXQT and Ubuntu, everything is a little different. They have a great support, whether it's IRC or Telegram or their forums. So if it's one of the things we should probably point out before we move to another distro discussion. Is that what it is? Distro talk. There is a lot of resources out there, and they're really helpful. And I recommend, if you're going through this and you have any issues, reach out. And Simon's really available and helps out a lot of stuff. And they just have a great team, and that's one of the things I get to see a little bit because I've helped them in testing. I don't really do that much, but I've interacted with them, and they are so helpful, and they're willing to do a lot of stuff for you.
Yep, they have a great set of people at the front helping people. But I did want to mention that I don't think Ubuntu Budgie has a Telegram group. A lot of the flavors have some type of Telegram group, and I don't think Budgie has one. At least I haven't found one yet. But they do have a great discourse forum that you can visit, and will help you out. So there. All right. So I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. Linux Spotlight this week was a great episode with Leo Chavez of Mintcast, and he's not here tonight, and not sure what's going on. Maybe he's probably preparing for Mintcast, but he's such a great dude, down to earth, friendly guy, cares about Linux, cares about open source. And of course I messed it up by the audio being messed up. But anyway, so the reason why the audio is messed up is when I create the podcast, edit the video in DaVinci Resolve, I do a stereo mix and I know I've been told before, do a mono. I do a stereo mix for the audio of the podcast. And I've been through 50 episodes and I don't think it's been messed up once. But I did use Leo's audio that he recorded from his mic in the episode. So I guess when he exported it as mono. And somehow, that didn't translate too well in DaVinci Resolve, and it ended up being where I was in stereo, but he was not. So if you watch the YouTube video, you would hear him out of just one ear. Okay, and the reason why I didn't notice this while I was editing...
The left ear.
The reason I didn't notice that, because this headset has two outputs, one stereo and one mono.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually leave it on the mono because it has a louder output. So I'm hearing this episode and I'm hearing it in both ears because it has a mono output. If I would have had a regular headset, I probably would have noticed it right away. But so there you go. There's the moral of the story, is to listen in stereo, just in case. But the way I do the episodes, after I get it done in DaVinci Resolve, I will put it in Audacity and rip the MP3 from it for the audio feed of the podcast. And so that exports in mono. So that was no problem. So everybody heard everything sound great in the audio portion of it, for the podcast part of it, but not the actual video. So there's the final explanation of what happened. And I don't know if it's worth re-uploading the whole episode, just to make it sound like it's in stereo or whatever. So we'll see. I don't know. Depends on how much time I got.
How many times do you get people that go back and watch them? That would be the answer.
I don't think that you're going to have... I don't think it's worth the amount of effort it's going to take to do that.
Leave it. You ought to leave it just because of how Leo was talking about his YouTube woes.
Yeah, pretty much. So that won't happen next week, but we'll talk about.
Oh yeah, if that happened next week, you would be in trouble.
I would be in deep doo-doo if that happened next week. I'm just saying.
You'd be called all kind of words we can't say on here.
Yep. All right. Moving on. I'm going to open it up to everybody before I go on to anything I want to bring up. Anybody got anything we want to bring up?
Calzones are tasty, and so is beer.
Tyler's here. Tyler, where you been, dude?
Shoot. I spent the last 4 months working Wednesday to Saturday nights. I'm finally back on day shift. Finally.
That's fantastic. And hopefully that means you'll be here every week.
For at least the next 4 months. I can't guarantee beyond that, but...
You got a rotating shift there every 4 months or what?
Yeah, we rotate every 4 months. It could be a pain.
All right. We also have Kai Loves Linux here. How you doing, Kai?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So, Kai, you help out, or you create a distro, right?
Yeah, Ubuntu Lumina Remix.
And how's it going, brother?
Exhausting.
He's making good progress, though.
Thank you. I've been needing to hear something like that for a while because I've been hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. Even something as simple as Plymouth themes have turned into nightmares.
Hey, there's Dustin. But anyway, Kai, we do have it on the list to try to talk about. So just so you know, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's the July 4th week or something like that. But it is coming up to try out for us to talk about. So.
Okay, no pressure.
No pressure. Just so you're aware, no big deal. But hey, Dustin, what's happening, dude?
Not much. How are you?
Fantastic. We got to talk about Budgie, dude.
Yeah, and of course I'm late to the party.
Of course.
Sorry. Well, you schedule it right during my dinner hour.
I know. I mean, what kind of ridiculous time is this to do it in?
I mean, why don't you work around my schedule?
I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry.
All about me.
Well, anyway, you probably didn't get to hear much of what we were talking about, but you kind of got one of the better reviews out of any of the flavors right now.
All right, I can go. I'm done. No,
there you go. It's all over with. But no, seriously. I'm going to mention something I mentioned before. Me and you have talked many times over the years about why I didn't run Ubuntu Budgie, and I had told you about the menu being one of those things, and that new menu is absolutely awesome, dude.
Yeah, David did a great job with that.
Yep.
He basically just took the elementary menu and ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a bunch of other stuff that he's added to it besides just doing the packaging and getting it ready for Ubuntu. Like there was a bunch of that foundational work, but then we've just kind of been listening to what the community's been saying and kind of going from there. But I can't lie, I'm pretty stoked with it too.
Yep. Well, you add that along with the shuffler, and some of the other applets that are on there. It's come so far, dude. It is really awesome.
Yeah, Jacob's been really focusing on that shuffler. It's kind of become his passion project. He was porting all the other applets to Vala and stuff, but this one's kind of taken over his fancy. He really, really likes working on this one, and he's going to continue to iterate on it. He's got some other ideas to kind of go with it. I've always kind of been pushing him more for the auto tiling just because that's the background I come from, but I think he sees it in kind of a different way, and his view isn't necessarily wrong. It's not wrong. It's just a different crowd, and I think it's servicing well.
Well, I think, like I said, I pull it up, put my windows where I want them, and continue on working in a good in a way that I want to work. You know what I mean? So yes, it's not auto tiling, but it definitely allows you to place the windows where you want them to, and that's what's important.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, then you'll like one of the other things he's working on. He's working on the ability to save your layouts.
Nice.
So then when you launch your applications, they just kind of pop right into where you left them and where you want them.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to push to make sure, and I'm going to try to make sure that he follows with the multi-monitor support properly, so that it's not only just the positional aspects on your single monitor, but also on your, like if you have multiple displays, that it'll actually pop the application over where you expect it to be.
Very nice.
So Rocco,
yeah.
While we have Dustin here, I think this might be a good time to point out how companies are giving back to open source developers.
Hey, look at that. Dustin, you're getting a gift, are you not?
I am. Slimbook sending me a unit. They had that promotion that they started talking about, I guess it was about a month and a half ago, maybe almost 2 months ago, but they basically threw it out there that they were going to give away a promotional unit to an open source developer. You basically just had to write, well, an email, but you had to kind of summarize not only what you're doing, why you're doing it, and kind of what you wanted to do with the unit. And so I was one of 4 people who won a unit.
Yep.
So I'm pretty stoked because a lot of my gear's from 2012 to I think 2015 is the newest thing I got. So
so what is
pretty happy about that. They
do you know the specs of it?
Yeah, it's the Slimbook Pro X. It's got an i7 in it, 256 gig NVMe. It defaults to 8 gigs of RAM, but I asked them if I could upgrade out of pocket, and I think they're going to let me. I'll find out on Monday, which means then I'll pump it up to 32 gigs. And it's got a MX250 NVIDIA GPU in it. So not like the highest end, but it'll definitely drive some bigger monitors. It's a 2K monitor, well, 1080p, 2K is a little, depends who you ask. But it's a 1080p, but they've got some pretty good specs on it. It's got this like facial recognition biometrics as well. So I'm kind of curious how that works and whether it's going to work once I wipe the OS and put my own on there. But
that's expected, dude. Come on.
Yeah, no, for sure. Maybe I can cherry pick some of the components that I need.
Well, we had the Ubuntu Focus guys on last week, and I always like highlighting how companies are interacting with the community. And Slimbook, and I don't have it right in front of me, what exactly all of the details were, but I think they had like $5,000 they were using to give back to the community in ways of, giving people in that contest basically laptops that are working in the open source world. And I thought that was like so fantastic, dude.
One of the things they did that I thought was a great idea is originally they were just going to give away a single unit, like a brand new unit. And then what they actually did is instead of doing that, they just took the refurbs that they were sending out for review and they split it into 4 giveaways, which, I mean, fine. So I get a unit that has a scratch on the chassis, whatever. As long as it works and does what it needs to do, I'm good with that. Stickers solve that problem.
Yep. Well, I'm going to put a link into YouTube chat for Slimbook. Everybody go check them out. Because like I said, they are another company that's giving back to the open source community, and that is awesome. Budgie. Dustin, we were talking about Budgie earlier, and I mentioned about the applets and how they are not going back upstream to Solus. So
it depends.
Okay. Well, I would mention certain things about it, but if you can clarify, that would be great.
Sure. So all it really is like, okay, it's 2 separate projects with 2 different goals, right? Like that's the real takeaway here. So in their goals, they have a much stricter guideline as to what they want to include in the repository and or the distribution. So for example, they don't want applets that are written in Python. Whatever technical reason, that's fine. That's their jam. That's cool. The other thing is sometimes maybe some of the applets that our team has produced duplicate some functionality or it isn't in the right place, so they don't want to include it, right? So if an applet's to get upstreamed, there's a bunch of discussion that has to happen up front between the multiple teams to plan out the applet. and whether it makes sense and whether they're interested in it. Now, usually the way we go about it is we'll start with a proof concept, like a minimum, an MVP, a minimum viable product. And you'll start working out it. And then sometimes in the past, we've opened, pull requests for inclusion, see where it goes. And sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not, because either again, I mentioned duplicate functionality, or maybe they don't agree with the way it works or the way it's built, or, stuff like that. But it's really just simply two different goals. That's really all it is. It's not because people don't want to play nice in the sandbox or anything like that. It's just, it's the exact same reason why Solus Budgie looks the way it does, and the exact same reason why Ubuntu Budgie looks the way it is. It's just two different people's view on the way a desktop can be configured. That's what Linux is. I mean, you look at every distro that has, pick your flavor of desktop. Honestly, most distros that come out now, it's another blend on a configuration. There's really no innovation in most of them, to be honest. Like, I'm not trying to slag on anything, but the reality is it's just another take on a configuration with different defaults. Most of them, right? Like, let's call it what it is. And in our case, that's kind of what's different between the two. They have their Budgie configuration, we have our Budgie configuration on top of two different bases, two different foundations, two different goals. That's all it really is.
Dustin, I'd like to ask you a quick question. You mentioned earlier this week about you installed a system and 38 minutes later, I think it was 38 minutes, you had your complete system up. So can you talk a little bit about that and what you're doing to put your configs upstream, or not upstream, I'm sorry, on like Git and bringing them down?
Sure. So what I do is I have a combination of C file and a program called Ansible, which is a configuration management tool primarily used in infrastructure space. And what I'm doing is I just configure all my machines with Ansible. And I have my own C file instance. And the reason I use C file specifically is because its job is syncing and syncing only, compared to like Nextcloud and things like that. The other thing is I've used both systems and I've just had really good results with C file. And the fact that you can encrypt individual libraries, and the fact that they have a command line client, which means I can automate setting up all my sync folders through my Ansible configuration. And so what that does is all my really sensitive stuff is sitting on my own server in encrypted libraries. So what I do is I basically kick off like a bootstrap script, which will just install the bare minimum tools, just like Git and PGP and the C file client. And then I have a shell script that kicks after that automatically configures. I have individual libraries for each individual real folder. So I don't have one master sync folder. I actually have a desktop folder mapped out. I have my documents folder mapped out. I have encrypted for my SSH and my GPG key folders mapped out. Every single thing is its own library. And this shell script just goes through and maps from my C file server down to my local desktops. Desktops being multiple, because I keep everything in sync through this. And so what that does is that takes care of my sensitive data, that takes care of my data, everything's backed up. And honestly, my data is usually back on my machine before I've even finished running my Ansible scripts. So then next, what you do is, so Ansible is written in YAML, love it or hate it, it is what it is. And you can do pretty much anything. And Ansible is not specific to Ubuntu. It's not specific even to desktops. Like, you can configure network routers and switches. You can do Windows. You can do whatever you want. And, well, not whatever you want, whatever there's a module for. But the beautiful thing is it just operates over SSH and WinRM. Which is the Windows side. But the point is you don't need an agent on your machine to start using it. So by default, the way it's used is you'll have these, they're called Playbooks, and they'll be sitting in a central spot, and you can just run them, and it pushes configuration out to all your servers. That's the usual use case. So what I do, though, is I've written it all specific for my desktop. And you can even do things like there's like dconf modules. So you can actually manipulate the dconf database. And for those of you that aren't familiar, some Linux, not everything uses it, mostly GTK. It seems to be a GTK-based technology. It's like an internal database of settings. So what I'll do is when my Ansible script goes, it actually sets up all my Budgie desktop settings. It sets up all my keyboard shortcuts. It will wipe out keyboard shortcuts I don't use. It will set my wallpapers. It will install all my software. Every piece of software I ever had on my machine goes right back in. And all my dot files, my non-sensitive ones, are sitting in that same Ansible repo, and they copy the files into place. They will restore keys. It basically does everything top to bottom. And the best part is it's kind of like documenting your entire setup through code. Like you just don't have to remember what you did or didn't install. It is all there, and all its configuration is there. And then so this Ansible script will pull all of this down and apply it to my machine. Now, Ansible is, what's the word I'm looking for? It has independency, I believe that's the word. I might be saying it wrong, but what that essentially means is you can run this script over top of itself as many times as you want with no ill effect. It's designed to do that. And what it does is it looks through the state of your machine, and if it's already happened, it basically skips that step. And if anything's changed, then it runs just the specific steps that are needed to bring it up to its configuration state. Like it just brings it to where the single source of truth, which is the code. And so what I do is I have it in a Git repository on GitHub. And when I bootstrap it, one of the things it does, it actually installs a cron job that uses a tool that's part of Ansible called Ansible Pull. And what that does is it actually pulls Ansible configuration from a Git repository. So it installs a method to itself to update the system at whatever schedule I specified. Like I have mine running like once an hour, or sometimes it depends what I have going on, but I generally do it once an hour. So then what I do going forward is I have multiple machines. Any setting, any software, any change I make to my system goes into that repository. That's the single golden piece of truth. And within the hour, if I don't do anything, it just shows up on my other systems. Whether that's software, whether that's configuration, whether it's dot files, whether it's a wallpaper, whether it's the menu, whether it's the applets. Like I even have it configured where, like in Budgie, your default panel, you can actually override it with a panel.ini, which just places all the applets on the panel that you want. So when I start my machine after this configuration, my panel's already laid out the way I want it with the custom applets that I use, not necessarily what the default is. There's a few things you can't tweak. So of course there's a few little rough edges you go and sand off, but the real takeaway is from the time I downloaded the ISO to walking away from the system, other than logging into everything, it was done. Downloaded the ISO, wrote it to a USB stick, restored my data, installed every piece of software I had before, all my configurations back, my themes are back, everything's set up, ready to go. It's just logging into my applications, and that's in 38 minutes flat. I timed it just because I wanted to see. And if I already had the USB stick, I probably could have cut 10 minutes off of that.
Yep.
It's amazing.
It's saved me numerous times. Like there's one time I walked into a training at the AWS headquarters, and my laptop was dead on arrival. I don't know why, but I had a USB key in my bag, popped it in, reinstalled my OS, had a base system within 10 minutes that just configured itself in the background while I started my class. Problem solved.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So
You know,
this is something
so-
that is, to me, very technical. It's not technical to you, but how easy is it for somebody non-technical to set up?
So it's not hard to set up, but you have to want to look at what Ansible is. Ansible, out of all configuration management, is probably the easiest one, I would say. There's a few factors, like how comfortable are you with YAML? Like YAML is pretty easy to get through. It's like, it's a nested hierarchy almost like a JSON object or like TOML, TOML or something like that. So it depends what your beginning comfort level is, but it's approachable. That's the best way.
Zero
I'm not going to
sound?
go and promise you.
Ground zero.
Zero approachable?
Ground zero. Yeah. That's where I'm coming in at.
Let me put it this way. If I sat down with you within 30 minutes, you would understand the basics that it would be usable for you in this scenario. Because there are other concepts, like you could talk about Ansible roles and Ansible Galaxy and all this other kind of stuff. But for this specific use case, it's not needed. You can run them as individual tasks. But it's like, if you go read it, like in a weekend, you could be up and understanding it and then just going from there. They have really excellent documentation. Like I look at the documentation all the time. And once you have the skeleton, it's a piece of cake. Like honestly, most people, if you're running a Budgie desktop, you could go fork my repository, go look at the code and you could understand it, no problem. That much I'm confident of. Because it's pretty much plain English. It's almost kind of like Python where your spacing matters, but it's very, very readable is I guess the best way I could put it.
Right.
And then there's always the little things that you got to figure out, like the chicken and the egg scenario where you have to bootstrap something before you can run Ansible, right? Because if you don't have certain tools on your machine, it's not going to work. Like you need Git on your machine because it's going to pull some information out of Git. You don't have Git, it's not going to work. So that's why I usually just I have like a little 10-line shell script that bootstraps it. And then from there on, it's all Ansible. And then it's even at the point like in my day-to-day where if I change something, like if I'm going to install a piece of software, goes into my Ansible script, I check it in and I walk away and it just shows up on my machine. That's it. That's all I do. I don't apt install anything anymore. I don't snap install. I don't do any of that. I just check it into a repo and walk away from it. And, you know, and it depends how fancy you want to get. If you want to set up linting before you check in, do some Git pre-commits or stuff like that, you can, but you don't have to. You can make it as simple as you want.
Daniel, too, you got a question?
Actually, two. One is, where can we find your repo? I don't remember. Is it just like GitHub bashfulrobot.files or something?
Yep.
Oh,
it's
okay, great.
It's literally just on my repo, and it's just actually bashfulrobot-ansible.
Awesome.
That's I can actually post a link in the. Where is it here?
And the other question was, you talked about C file, which I've heard Noah Chalaya talk about that on Ask Noah, and
yeah,
didn't really know what it was. But so I'm a SyncThing user. So is this sort of like SyncThing except you have a central server?
Yes.
Or
exactly that. It's not peer-to-peer. It's more like Nextcloud, right? It's just that it focuses on the syncing aspects, whereas Nextcloud is chosen to, they have the core sync engine, but you know, they're doing calendars, video conferencing, all that other stuff. It's, you know, both are a great product. I just like this one because of its narrower focus. And I've never had any issues with like larger files. Like I have ISOs that are syncing in the background, and I've never had a file corruption on Nextcloud. On older versions, I haven't checked it lately, I've had some large file issues, very minimal. I mean, they're not a replacement for a backup. That's all I'm going to say.
Mm.
You know, like you should still back up your data because there are sync conflicts sometimes, right? So.
Well, I just had another thought. So then, since all of everything's Ansible down to your desktops, then you can just back up your C file server with your preferred method, or do you also still have backups of your desktops?
I'm paranoid. So
okay, me too.
What I do, because here's what I do. I've been bitten a couple of times just on things being out of sync. So actually what I do is, because I'm a single user on this C file server, I actually sync everything from the desktop side because I know that I have other files I want to back up from there that maybe aren't on the sync server for whatever reason. So what I actually use a program called Restic, because it supports many different backends, but out of the box, it supports encryption by default. So is compatible with a lot of the S3 object storage type providers. And so what I like about it is it can target object store, it can target an SSH server, it can target local USB. They even have an API server that if you want to talk a native API, you can install it on a target server to use that. I love it so much. It was the first snap package I ever built, and I maintain it for the upstream because I just use it that much. And what's great is you can write one script to target all these different destinations. So from my desktop, I actually have it go to an external USB drive. I actually have it go to 2 just because they're here anyways. And then I send it off to an object storage. And I use one called Wasabi simply because it's dirt cheap.
Yeah,
it's really cheap. And so that way, if my house goes up in fire, well, I have my data out in the object store, encrypted on the cheapest possible storage I can get. But the local ones are simply for speed of restore. So if I lose a file, I can just recover from a local USB drive, and I don't have to do like from the remote, like just data transfer times over the internet, right? Like if I had some large files or whatever, you know, I like to have them here. And then not only that, if something ever happened with the cloud provider, I mean, whatever. I mean, I doubt they are, but if it ever does, I've still got 2 local copies. So most of the times I just restore straight off of the C file server, but I just have those other mechanisms in place just because I come from the infrastructure world and I don't like to be kicked in the head by losing data.
Okay. Well, I'm actually a Borg user myself, and I'd recently discovered Rustic. And so like being able to do all the stuff I can with Borg, but then also being to back it up to an S3 style storage or, you know, just that sounds awesome.
Yeah, well, the other thing about Rustic too is for other providers that it doesn't support, it actually works in conjunction with rclone.
Yes, I noticed
which
that.
is another. So those 2 projects actually work together. I think rclone actually provides some of the backend mechanisms to Rustic. So it's just a really good, and I pretty much any tool that's written in Go, I love it because it's a single binary. Like even if there isn't a package for it, you just download it from releases, drop it in your path, and away you go. Like there's nothing magical about it, you know? It just works.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, Dustin. We've pretty much covered our opinions on Budgie, but one last thing about Budgie. Who's the target audience for Ubuntu Budgie, and you know, give us your feature that you like the most about this release.
This release, well, some of the fixes to Shuffler were big for me. It's honestly, it's mostly, I'm trying to think of what I actually like about it the most. It just feels good out of the box. Like that's always what I liked about Budgie. That's what attracted me to it in the first place when I joined the team. It's something like, all my automation aside, I can actually install it and kind of start working right away. There's nothing I have to change. If I change something, it's because of personal preference. It's not because I don't have to do anything to make it usable. It gets out of my way. That's the biggest reason I'm not a distro hopper either, is because I have other things I need to do. I don't want to configure a system anymore. So much so that that's why I automated my desktop. It doesn't interest me. I just want to write some code, go build some infrastructure. I'd rather spend my time there. It's simple, it's modern, it's extendable if you want it to be, like the applets and such, but it doesn't have to be. And you can pretty much make it whatever you want it to be. You know, there's no forced paradigm on you. You can just use it.
Right.
That's honestly what I like about it. That's what brought me to it, you know?
Well, the one thing that you have to make time for is upgrading your machine so we can play some Call of Duty. Just saying.
Yeah, I need a new tower. I got a new laptop coming, but now I need a new tower.
Yep. All right. Well, I really appreciate you being here, brother. You're more than welcome to stay.
No worries.
But I really appreciate you being here.
All right. No worries. Sorry I scooched in on the back side of it, but
yeah, you're late, dude. Come on.
I know. I'm always late.
All right. This week, Ubuntu Podcast put out a little 5-minute episode, basically an update for the show, and it pretty much said they have been having their editing outsourced to give them the time to actually do the show, and recently that has changed. The circumstances have changed, so they are not able to do that anymore, and they were basically asking for help for, I think, the first time ever that they've asked for money to help them continue the show. Not continue the show. They still want to continue the show, but to keep it on a regular cadence, a regular release cycle, which is, once a week. They're looking for somebody to edit the show. And I think that they've already, as of this point, I think they've already decided on who that's going to be. But they are still in need of help in any way that you guys can. So I'm just putting it out there. If anybody has the ability to help them out and wants to become a patron, if you've been listening to it, and I think it's one of the longest running podcasts out there. It is a great podcast, and if you want to help them out, go check out their Patreon page and do what you can. All right. You guys have anything else you want to bring up? Throwing it out there, opening it up. It's a very dangerous thing, but I'm opening it up.
So I know Dustin mentioned that he was getting a new Slim Book soon. I actually just put in an order this last week for a new System 76 laptop, the new Lemur Pro.
Which is sweet in itself, dude.
Oh, it is beautiful. Like, I cannot wait to get it. I kind of went with some base specs. I'm going to make a Micro Center run probably this weekend to grab some parts to upgrade it once I get it in. But I am so looking forward to getting that laptop, especially for that battery life. That way I could just, bring it out here, chill out here all day while just having my laptop in front of me and not have to worry about grabbing a charger or finding an outlet.
Well, if you watch Jason Evangelo's video on that and the other one he was reviewing, man, I mean, both of them are awesome. There's no question about it.
Right.
Both of them are awesome, but the Lemur Pro is fantastic. Battery life, like you said, is awesome.
In that video he did showing off the boot speed with Core Boot, that looks fantastic.
And people wonder, they say, oh, well, it's just a reskin of Ubuntu. No. Pop puts a lot of stuff into it. A lot of stuff.
But not even without Pop. It's just a lot of engineering work that goes into the laptop itself, especially with replacing the firmware with Core Boot and having the open embedded controllers. That's a lot of work that goes into it.
Well, when I said Pop, I actually meant System 76. But
right.
That's what came to mind. Yeah. So, yes.
I mean, they put a lot of work into Pop OS, and I'm not denying that, but the laptop itself has a lot of after engineering work that goes on after them getting it from Clevo.
Yep.
Rocco, do you want to talk about really high-end hardware? There was some announcement today or this week from the Raspberry Pi Foundation about a new Pi 4 with 8 gigs of RAM.
There was, Bill. So I am not a Raspberry Pi expert. So, I'll let you guys talk about that if you want to. But they do offer one now with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it goes up to 16, but they only have 8 installed.
So according to the literature, the system itself can support up to 16 gigs of RAM. I don't believe that exists yet.
It doesn't.
The big funny thing about this is when they did their documentation last year, when they released the Pi 4, it had like an 8 gig RAM section on it, and it was like the big hidden secret. And they explained it. Micron did some stuff with them and allowed them to have this on the board. But one of the cool things that the Raspberry Pi Foundation has done also is they've announced that they're going to change Raspbian. And the new name that they have, I can't remember what it is offhand, but they're going to actually have a 64-bit and a 32-bit updates. And they're doing some really cool stuff. There's a camera module that they came out with just a couple weeks ago so that you can set up a very high-end camera on your Pi using lenses that you may already own. They're doing some really cool stuff. On that note, Wimpy recently did a couple podcasts where he on YouTube, where he has a new tool to take the Ubuntu server, which is a certified operating system which has full support from Ubuntu, and throwing whatever desktop you want, whether it's Ubuntu Mate, which is what you should run, or even something like Ubuntu Budgie, which I don't know why you'd run. Obviously, that's a joke. But Wimpy has its Desktopify, and it's on his GitHub. And it's a script you run, and you install the Ubuntu server, and then you run this script, and it'll put, you choose whichever desktop you want. It's Ubuntu, and it really is nice. And if you throw an 8 gig Pi at this, you actually have something that's really usable as a very inexpensive system for someone.
Bill, even on top of that, the big thing is their firmware update that's coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, the USB boot.
The USB boot is going to be like change that whole platform. I mean, that was the biggest news. The 8 gig we knew was coming, but like the USB boot by default is going to be amazing.
Explain that, Joe.
So right now you have to boot off an SD card, and even there are some workarounds. You can keep your boot file basically on the on the SD card, and then it's janky, but you can make it point to a USB, but you couldn't natively boot off of an external USB drive. You had to boot off the SD card. So the speed difference, because it's got USB 4.0, so the speed difference between the SD card just can't hang. Being able to, and they've even got a little adapter, I think you can pop an NVMe drive right into the USB 4. And I mean, the 4 gig already runs pretty good off the SD card, like it's passable, but that is going to just...
See, I knew I waited for a reason.
Yeah.
This would be an amazing emulation system, because it already does great for emulation, but I got to thinking the other day that this would probably be great for specifically emulating Wii games, because the Wii had an ARM processor in it. So it basically be running natively instead of what it does on a normal laptop.
The Wii was PowerPC.
Yeah,
It had two processors. It had two processors.
Oh, yeah,
Most of what it ran, like the menu and the normal apps, ran on the ARM processor. The other processor was PowerPC, and that's what your actual games tended to run on. But
is that what we actually want to emulate?
You want to emulate both, because they may have something where, for some odd reason, it may just run better on the ARM processor. So that is a potential possibility to see pop up in a game. But there are a lot of people who use the Dolphin emulator to have like the Wii menu, and that is an ARM code base. So it would probably run better on Dolphin on ARM. And I actually did check, and they not only does Dolphin support AMD 64 Linux and Android, it also supports ARM 64 Linux. So this is actually something you could do. So it basically be like you're building your own Wii, and it's really easy to do. I've kind of done it. The Wiimotes are Bluetooth. You basically just need a couple candles to get the pointer working, and you're done. It's really easy. So I want to see somebody doing this and see if you actually get more performance with that greater amount of RAM. You probably wouldn't get much, but I want to see it.
All right,
I still have an actual Wii, so...
Let me correct myself. I said USB 4.0. If you find it, I'm sure it's amazing, but I meant 3.0.
I was about to say, sir.
Well, we're breaking. Yeah. We're announcing all kind of things. It's also going to have a 4K display that pops out of it, and
virtual reality.
Like if the Raspberry Pi were to beat AMD and Intel to the punch on that would have been a game changer right there.
Kai, you wanted to jump in?
So I just wanted to real quickly jump in at the beginning of when we started talking about ARM, because Ubuntu Lumina has been planning to actually support ARM with an official image that I am developing for it.
Nice.
Because I think that would be a great place for the Lumina desktop to work as a lightweight-ish desktop environment that doesn't need many features And I've actually ran a poll on Twitter about if I should really go through with it. And out of 200 something votes, I got 10% saying absolutely not, and 90% saying yes. And so I really think the ARM, like I really want the new Raspberry Pi. However, at the moment, it's going to be a little hard for me to get.
Yeah. Well, that's good, brother. That's good. You will have to update us on that.
So I am really excited. I really do want to get a Raspberry Pi 4 and actually try the Desktopify script on it, because I've seen a few of the live streams that Wimpy was working on that with, and it looks fantastic.
Still haven't bought a Raspberry Pi. I don't know why. Just haven't. You know, it's just
you're like me, and it'll sit over here. I think I've got Pi-hole running. That's about it.
That's basically what
now
I'm
gonna have. I already ordered the 8 gig, so I can have Pi-hole running on the 8
So
gig.
I've got one Pi 3B Plus running as a Unify controller.
Oh, that's a good use for it.
I have a Pi 1B Plus. I keep wanting to do stuff with it, and they say have a Pi 3. You know, and it's like.
I really want to buy the new 8 gig model, but I need to save up money for building a $2,000 desktop because I want them ray tracing capabilities. But I do plan to buy one at some point. So far, all I have is a Rock Pro 64 and an all-in-one desktop thing that I made, which was inspired by Linus Tech Tips video recently.
Oh, I did see your post on that. That was pretty cool. I saw your picture on Telegram. That was pretty awesome.
It's a pain to do.
How is that little Rock Pro?
So when I first started trying it out, when I got the Rock Pro, the Manjaro ARM image had a bug where if you tried to update, I think with the Linux firmware update, caused the entire OS to freeze. And at that point, I didn't know what was going on, so I went to ARMBN. And I hung around on that for a little while. It's fine. One bug you will notice, and this is on basically everything I've tried, is the fan has basically no control. It is either on or off. And that thing is really high-pitched and whiny. It's like a little 4-year-old kid being like, cool down! So you're either going to have an OS where it's constantly running or an OS where it doesn't run at all. So be prepared to deal with that. There are ways to get around it to have it at least turn on and off at certain temperature thresholds. But most people aren't going to want to go through that whole rigmarole. At this point, I'm back on Manjaro ARM. It's going great. It doesn't get too hot. It gets a little bit warm. Make no mistakes about that. It gets warm. But it's not like it's going to sear my hand off or anything like that. Honestly, if you're wanting something that is comparable power to maybe a Raspberry Pi 3-ish, and you're thinking hey, I might want to plug some SATA drives into this, go for this. Go for the Rock Pro, because you can stick a PCIe drive in it, or a PCIe card, which you can't do on anything else that I've seen except for one other computer. And that one computer, I cannot find a price tag for, and I guarantee you it is several $1,000s, because it's like a 32-core ARM computer, and nobody needs that.
Jinda, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, they updated the firmware for the Raspberry Pi, and you can overclock it now to 2 gigahertz, the Raspberry Pi 4. The original time when they had the firmware, they kind of made a mistake on it, and it was running hot, and I think they dialed the processor back. So most people are running a case and a fan, and you can really overclock it to the point of way more than I ever would think you would ever overclock anything. Right now, mine's running at 50 Celsius.
Wow.
So do you, if you're overclocking a Raspberry Pi, do you need, I know that people have cases with fans, but do you need a high-end fan? Like, is it something
They don't
where
make a high-end fan.
They don't make a high-end fan? One fan or what?
There's different
yeah,
cooling
it's-
systems that you can get.
You can get the heat sinks
including
too. Yeah.
Liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original unit was designed to have basically nothing on it, just a board. And since everyone's got a heat sink and a fan on it, you can overclock it. I just checked mine. Mine's running at 43 degrees Celsius, and it's overclocked to 1750.
Oh wow,
nice.
And it doesn't care. And
Guess what we're doing
so
tonight, little
impressed
lady.
with it.
Jinda, what do you use it for, dude?
Basically playing. I silly stuff. I mean, right now I have it running right now, and I'm trying to remote into my laptop just for fun.
Right.
I have one at work that plays the on-hold music because somebody put a MP3 player in there, and by the way, they work for like a month. And they burn up, they still sort of work, but they don't work right. So I put a Raspberry Pi in there, and it's a Raspberry Pi 2. It's been running for 4 years. The power goes on and off continuously, and it doesn't care. I mean, for what is it, $50? How much do you really expect?
Yep,
they're great.
You
Chris?
learn so much stuff.
Yeah, well, I got a couple Raspberry Pi stuff going on. I have one that I'm controlling exterior lights because I got tired of having to readjust the timers all the time, and I'm going to come up with a second version of that where it's going to have a front panel. Right now I got a TTY into it, or SSH actually, and just go in, and all I do is I wrote a module that sends a pulse to turn a contactor on, or a pulse to turn it off, and then I use cron to determine what times I want to have that done, and it works out pretty good. Then the other thing is I'm starting to gather a bunch of Pi 4s, and I'm going to make a Pi frame out of it.
So, Chris, how did you go about? I know Nate did his little project for his Christmas lights, but how you go about making, like, using a Raspberry Pi for exterior lights? Like, what is it connected to? Like, what are the lights connected to?
Well, the way I have it done is there's a special kind of solenoid called a contactor, which you can use low voltage to activate, and then that actually will clunk and make the connection. That'll turn the power on to the 110 or the 220 power, depending which lighting system we're using at that point. And so the Pi isn't actually handling any of the power. All it's doing is turning on and off the switch, and that's doing it through the data pins. You just say, okay, I want data pin 1 to send a pulse, and it'll turn that on, activate the contactor, and then when the turn off program is activated, it does the opposite. It kills the power to the solenoid, and then the solenoid releases and lets go of or opens the circuit. So,
is that connected via Wi-Fi or physical wires? Or how's it connected?
I use little Wi-Fi as possible. I mean, I use Wi-Fi all the time on the laptop and on my phone and stuff like that. But if I can get away with doing hardwire, I will always do hardwire.
Well, Chris, are your pins on you're talking about the IO pins on the top? Are you using a hat to connect to that, or do you have the Pi kind of in the vicinity of the solenoid, and then
I have the Pi in the vicinity of the solenoid,
and then you just SSH into it to do anything?
Right, exactly.
Got it. Very cool.
Yep, very nice.
I'm a bit like you, Rocco. The only pies I have are in the oven.
Yeah, usually either oven or the fridge, one or the other.
The thing I'm getting excited about is building this Pi frame, though. I'm thinking I'm just going to start with like 3 Raspberry Pis and start getting them talked together and clustering them and stuff like that. So, I don't know what I'll do with them yet. I just want to play with it.
Mine Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah, there we go.
So there was, okay, so we have a Discourse forums, right? And I don't check it near as much as I should, so, if you guys have posted anything in Discourse and I didn't answer right away, I'm sorry, but, I don't get there that often. But anyway, there was a topic way back in 2019 about what mistakes have you made when you first started Linux? And I think this is such a great topic. So I want to know from you guys what mistakes you made when you first started Linux. And I'm not going to say any of mine because we probably have to just restate it and say, what haven't you made mistakes in? So that would be a shorter series. But tell us what mistakes you guys have made when you started using Linux. Jinda, go ahead.
The first desktop that the first Linux distro I installed, I think, was Red Hat 5.2. I think it was in 1998. And that's an RPM distro. I actually installed a Debian file and got it to work. I didn't know that was bad to do, honest.
Okay. Very nice. Well, but see, that's not something that you destroyed, or I destroyed partitions. I did so many dumb things when I started Linux.
Yeah, I did that too, but I think that's more expected. I really do. I think that's kind of more yeah, of course. I mean, doing that I thought was the dumbest thing I ever. It worked.
Yeah.
It worked. Why would you do that? I don't know.
Hey, you didn't know any better.
Right, I didn't.
All right, Thomas.
So one of my first Linux installations, I had a 200 megabyte boot partition. And 200 megabytes for a boot partition. And I'm not talking the boot EFI partition. I'm talking about the partition the kernel lives on, right? And that's typically enough. But I was the wise guy that didn't know that in order to update Ubuntu, you have to do apt update and apt upgrade. I just kept thinking, oh, apt update is fine. So, my system's not up to date for a year, maybe. And then I finally discover apt upgrade. I start doing that. But because I don't know about apt auto remove, I just kept piling up kernels on my system. And it's like kernel after kernel after kernel after kernel. So at some point, I think I had 3.14, 3.16, 3.18, 4.0, 4.2. I had
You forgot to mention
many.
the low latency kernel.
Oh, no,
Tom.
I hadn't discovered that yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I just piled up all of these kernels on my system from upgrading. And because I didn't know about auto remove and I didn't think that apps knew how to do this, I kept going in to the boot partition and manually deleting the VM linas and init FS files. And one day I thought I was being all smart, and I was in the command line and I was like, okay, I want RM to delete all of these, but not these, and completely wiped out my boot partition. And
done that many times, dude. I can't count the amount of times that I wiped out partitions. Just saying.
And of course, I didn't know how to fix that. So I'm just sitting here just like, okay, I can't reboot. I can't suspend. If I do either of those things, well, I'm not sure about the suspend, but I was erring on the side of caution with the suspend. If I do either of those things, my system will die. I had to figure out how to fix this or else reinstall.
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, we always talk about how far Linux has come, how far the community's come. And this is like true because like when I started in Linux, it wasn't quite the same. You know what I'm saying? So, when I obviously you guys know that I can break pretty much anything. I broke it many times, and asking for help back then wasn't exactly you didn't get the responses you were looking for. Let's put it that way. So it was a rough time to learn because like I said, I was coming in from it blind, just starting, didn't know anything, just, hey, let me try this new thing out. Oh, I blew my windows up. What do I do now? Yeah, it was a rough time.
And I had no one I could go to for help.
Yep.
The only other person who knew Linux was Amalith, who's not on here anymore.
I know. Where's he been, dude?
He has been expanding his own empire. He has his own podcast. He has his own blog.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the podcast called?
Redacted Life. And if you go to, I think the website is redacted.life. His website is secluded.site, and that's where his blog is. He also has another website at nixnet.services. He hosts his own Mastodon instance. He runs several Tor exit nodes. I think he might have a Nextcloud instance up that's publicly usable. I don't know about that. He's doing a bunch of hosting stuff, and it's crazy. He doesn't own, but he has a server in Germany. He has a server in, I think, LA. I don't know. He's expanding his own empire. Yeah. He's doing things that I have no idea how to do. He is very experienced with Nginx. I don't know.
Nice. Very nice. All right, Kai, go ahead.
So I first started using Linux back in, not too long ago. Fedora 29 was my first distribution. And with that, one of the first things I broke within the first 3 days of trying to use Linux was I accidentally destroyed the usability of sudo. I don't even know how I did it. I ran like a bash script, and I don't even remember what I ran at all. And it was supposed to do something or another that had nothing to do with sudo, and I somehow still broke sudo, and I couldn't figure it out, and I had to reinstall the entirety of Fedora 29 in order to fix it.
It sounds so familiar that you broke it and you didn't know how you did it, because been there.
I do that every week.
Was it the copy and paste off the internet?
Yeah, pretty much.
Copypasta.com.
I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. So,
I mean, I'm still breaking things now. I'm just breaking them more commonly.
Yep.
I mean, I broke my laptop for a solid 2 hours today, yesterday, because I was trying to build a Plymouth package for the bootloader. And that broke my entire system for a good couple hours. I couldn't fix it. Well, I did fix it in the end by removing Plymouth, and now I've been having issues because I realized what my package did that I probably shouldn't do.
Yep. All right, Farron, go ahead.
So I started in, I think it was 2013 with an install of Ubuntu 12.04 using Ruby, right?
Yep.
So I enjoyed it and whatnot, I'm not gonna lie. And during the time I was trying it, I went in the software center, found a listing for the GNOME 3 desktop environment and installed that. Went into that, and then when I was exploring it, I looked in the power menu and under the networks bit, found an option called airplane mode. And of course, me back then was wondering what that did. So I turned it on, then found out what it did. And then when I went to turn it off, nothing happened. No matter where I tried and how much I tried, each time I turned it off, it turned it back on, as if it couldn't turn it back off. And even more insult to injury is that it also disabled networking in my Windows install that I installed Ubuntu with.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So that was a poor moment.
Yep. All right, Daniel too. Go ahead.
All right, so this is being stupid with Linux and also just being stupid with computers. So shortly after I came to Linux, I was like in this was like the same time frame that Farron is talking about. I had decided to build my first PC, but then also I was a cheapskate and my parents weren't giving me any money, so I got like an Intel motherboard off of eBay. And I decided to install Gen 2 on it. And
You like pain?
a little. But so then I was following the tutorial of this guy. You can find him on YouTube, Das Greger, who likes to do things. He doesn't. He likes to use old deprecated ways of doing things. So I was installing Grub 1, and that kind of thing, and basically got into a situation where for a solid year I didn't have a bootable disk. I had to boot to a rescue grub like USB and then pick my Linux partition and boot from that. And I didn't know I could like go and ask for help on the, I don't know, like somewhere on the internet. And while I was there in Gen 2, I fell for the systemd meme, and I tried to install GNOME without systemd, which was not fun.
Right.
And I basically added like 3 other repositories, and I didn't know that much about like rescuing my system, so I lost all of my data because it just wouldn't boot anymore. Anyway.
Nice. Good times, Daniel. Good times.
Yeah.
Big Pod, what mistakes did you make early on?
Well, the first time I booted Linux, I believe I booted the server edition in a VM. And because at the time, that's the first mistake I did at the time, and a long time afterwards, I believe I was 12 or 13 at the time, and about 10 years ago that is, I thought that desktop on Linux was just a joke. And I thought that for about 5 years until 1710, Ubuntu 1710. And I thought it was a joke. So I installed server to check it out. And first thing I tried to do, I tried to create a user. And I even got lost in that. So I just removed that VM and didn't look at Linux. I looked at it a couple of times, but made the same ending. So until 1710, when my professor walked with a laptop that had 1710 installed, and I just fell in love with GNOME that was installed on 1710. And that's how my whole Linux journey really started.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, stay away from the server stuff. We're desktop guys. Come on. All right. Who's up next? Daniel, number 1. What's your story? Works better when you're unmuted.
Usually.
Yeah, just, I mean,
Sorry.
it's 50-50.
See, I was so worried about turning my hand off. So 2 things, the customary that I think we've all done, like you're installing Linux at the very beginning, and I can't even remember how long ago this was, but like you're not even really sure about these things called partition numbers and, you know, SDA, what the hell is SDA, what's SB, and you pick the wrong one and then everything's gone.
I may or may not have destroyed using DD SDA a few times.
Yeah. So I've done that. But then the other thing that I did is actually after I thought I knew something about Linux, I thought I was going to install Arch. And I ran that actually for a while. And then I got kind of busy with stuff, and it was on my desktop, and I was using my work laptop a lot. And I hadn't gotten back to my desktop in like a while.
Done.
I think it was probably 4 or 5 months. So I go into Arch, and it's like, oh, you have all these packages. There's like 2,000 packages you have to update. You should probably do this. Okay, no problem. Run the command. That was the end of that. Tried to reboot. Stuff wasn't working. Nothing worked. I had to completely reformat the drive. That was my first attempt at Arch, and I didn't attempt Arch after that for like, I don't know, a year, until I realized that it wasn't Arch. It was me just being dumb, because they clearly tell you got to make sure you log in and like, it's a rolling release, man. Make sure you're actually rolling with it.
Yep.
That's funny stuff. Mr. Tyler, what you got?
So this wasn't really until 5 years in of using Linux, because this was really the only catastrophic error I made, so that's why it sticks out. And that was, I was in Linux, and I said, you know what, I'm going to shrink and attempt to move an NTFS partition to a different part of the drive.
You are the special kind of genius. Oh boy.
That not work. That was the only time I attempted that.
Ouch.
I did
that was 5 years in. That was
Please
5 years in
tell
of
me-
using it.
Please tell me you attempted a copy instead of just a straight move.
Did you DD it?
Look, sometimes
not-
you
no.
just don't know to copy it, okay? Just sometimes you just don't realize you should be copying more
It's
than
harder to
removing it.
move than copy anyway. All the computer does when it copies is moves, it copies and deletes. So.
That's fun. That's a fun one.
That was that was so that was more of a general, not really a Linux specific mistake, but just general stupid move. I don't know why I thought of it, but I did it. That was 9 years ago.
Joe, you had to do something stupid in your life with Linux.
Today?
With Linux.
So let me look around. I tell you what, a couple of weeks ago, I tried to move a swap. That was bad. My big mistake, I jumped in about 2005, found Ubuntu ISO. I'm like, okay, I know ISOs, no problem. My dad had a computer that he used daily. And I thought, okay, Dad, I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to put this brand new Ubuntu on it, man. It's awesome.
Sounds so familiar.
So what about, my dad like lives in Windows world. Like, she's like, what about my Internet Explorer? I can't live without Internet Explorer. Check my email and Outlook. And I'm like, it'll be fine, because I'm going to put it alongside of it. It's great. Fire it up, install it, goes well. So proud. Boot into Ubuntu. Absolutely hates it. He's just like, this is the worst thing ever. I want my Windows back. I'm like, no problem. Let's go back to Windows. It's gone. So yeah, I had formatted the whole disk.
Oops.
Yeah, that was my
These are painful moments, dude. These are painful
they
moments.
hurt. Yeah, to this day, I showed my dad my Raspberry Pi a few months ago, and he's like, oh, it's a really cool little computer. He's like, what's on it? And I'm like, I'm about to go put Ubuntu on. He's like, nope. I'm like, it's been 15 years, Dad.
life,
Come back. It's been 15 years.
You scarred him for life.
Yeah,
he's ruined.
Hey,
I'm trying to convince a neighbor that that upgrading to Windows 10 will not make their computer faster.
Yeah. Well, are they on Windows 8? Yeah, it will.
They're on Windows 7 currently.
And definitely will.
Yeah, then
it will 100% or 1000%.
That's faster as putting Linux on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'll just we're waiting for a hard drive to come in. I'm like, I'll put Linux on it. Like, if you hate it, sure, you can spend $150, but I think you'll like it. So.
Yeah, Windows 10 is free, man. You just don't register.
Right. Come, Vince. You're pretty
Windows
quiet
10?
tonight, dude. Well, come on, give us something you did that you made a mistake in.
Well, since you asked, I was rescuing some stuff from my mum's place a little while back, and I found a box copy of Open Linux from Caldera. I don't know if you can see that. Probably from about the turn of the millennium. But I actually can't remember exactly what I did. But when I looked in the box, to my surprise, I did find a Windows ME startup disk.
Oh my god!
I must have done something really bad.
Really bad. They're
That's
running
what's really
ME.
bad.
I wish I could
Yeah,
find all
well-
of that old stuff I had, dude.
Oh, Windows ME, oh, horrid.
Oh, ME was the worst.
It
Oh.
was. This, oh,
Oh,
ME was
horrid.
bad, dude.
Oh,
ME was
man.
really, really bad.
Sorry I had to bring that up.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
well,
Nowadays,
Twitch, you know, I guess.
All of these are like bad memories. We probably shouldn't end on these bad memories. I'm just saying.
Some good ones. We'll never come back. Next week, the show's going to be like 2 people.
I know, right?
I know, Rocco, you mentioned like early on you ran into some community issues. I do want to make a note that I remember like 13 years ago trying PC Linux OS for the first time. And I had a problem with the version of XChat that was pre-installed, hopped onto IRC. It's like, hey, I'm having this issue with XChat, that the version that's installed by default. And they're like, oh, that's a GNOME application. We don't support that. We're a KDE distro. I'm like, but it's on the distro by default. Why won't you support it if you pre-install it? So that's a bad support experience that has stuck with me over the years.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was at a time where people weren't, open to answering questions, dude. Like they just, you were but it's gotten way better, dude. But you were back then, you were expected to know. Like, why are you even asking this question?
RTFM.
Yeah.
RTFM.
Well, it wasn't even just RTFM. Like there were times where I got that, but a lot of times it was just, why are you asking this stupid question?
Why are you so dumb?
Yeah, exactly.
You're
And it's like,
supposed to know.
Right.
I don't even
Yeah.
want to come back here, so.
Well, that was before Google too, so you could.
Well, even a couple of years ago, we didn't have this like nice Telegram groups where you can just pop in. And I mean, there was a guy popped in fresh the other day, asked the question. Of course, he left and never came back. So he probably got the answer somewhere else. But I went and found it for him. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is great. You can come in here and ask anything. It's awesome.
All right. We are out of time. So I would love to continue this conversation. Maybe we'll continue it some other time, but we're out of time. But everybody gets a last word. Joe, last word.
No Joe confusion this week.
Nope.
So, hey, it's been fun. It's been awesome. If you haven't messed with the Unity, what do they call it? Ubuntu? I don't know. They just released version 4 this week. Tweaked a lot of things. Really nice. So I'm enjoying playing with that. But great show, great laughs, good crew. See you guys next week.
Ubuntu Unity remix.
Oh, they changed it. I don't know. When I installed it, I thought I got it wrong because it said Ubuntu in my the ISO file.
I think
says
they changed
Ubuntu.
that in the boot screen since in the latest
version 4. This new version, it changed. But yeah, anyways, it's a lot of fun. Memory lane walk. It's
Yep.
good.
All right, Bill, last word.
Thank you, Rocco. Thank you, Dan, for everything you do and trying to be stuck at work today and not being here. And thanks to David, Dustin, everybody on the Ubuntu Budgie crew for all the stuff they've done and continue to do.
All right, Aris, last word.
Thank you, everybody who makes the show possible. And I enjoyed the conversation today. Thank you.
Tyler.
I had fun being back on Biddle after being stuck on night shift for 4 months. Just got to chill outside, enjoy a couple beers, have a calzone, and talk about Linux.
Nice. Tony, last word.
Thanks for the show, Rocco. Enjoyed it. Another good one. Not quite so many people here this week. I don't know where they've all gone. Perhaps we said something we shouldn't have done and frightened them away.
Probably.
Hopefully there'll be a few more next week. But take care, everyone. And what is going on? What's Paul doing?
Took you guys long enough.
I've been seeing it, but I've been ignoring it, Thomas, because I was trying to keep a straight face.
I never noticed it until just now. But anyway, take care, everyone. Stay safe till next week, and I look forward to the next week's show.
Jason, last word.
Well, as always, thank you to everybody that makes the show happen. Rocco and Joe, the new Joe over here, for helping out tonight. I did get the next distro installed and got it ready to go and messed around with it a little bit. I did not mention any of my troubles as far as computers go because I do that for a living. So I've had more computer woes than most people. Not necessarily all my own, but dealing with other people's issues.
Well, maybe that's something we cover next week or something, dude.
And just remember, 99.9% of all computer issues are between the chair and the keyboard.
Pebcac. Dave Jones, last word.
Thanks, Rocco, for being a great host. It's great every week. I also want to thank Dustin for coming, even though he was a little late. It was great hearing what he had to say. And want to thank him for helping produce what I think is one of the better 2004 distros out there.
MC?
Thanks to Rocco and Company for putting this on, and everyone for showing up, and to Dustin and crew for the Ubuntu Budgie. It was, like I said, it wowed me, and it's been a while since I've gotten a big wow from an offshoot distro. So, I'm really excited about using it. So,
Big Pot?
Currently, I'm just ashamed that I remember my moments of really, really, really bad times in Linux. But thank you for having us, and well, congratulations to all Americans. You successfully launched another 2 men from your land.
Colin, last word.
Thanks, Rock and Co, for the platform. I didn't bring up any of my mistakes today. You just watch my videos, you'll probably see them anyway, and I've got plenty of mistakes planned moving forward as well, Rocco. So, I really like Ubuntu Budgie, and I might even nuke Ubuntu proper and put Ubuntu Budgie on instead, because I cannot access my network still with Ubuntu proper. Because it's just showing everything as folders. I have put that in on on their launchpad and added my 2 cents worth. So hopefully that gets sorted. But yeah, Ubuntu Budgie might be worth a try. See how we go. So everyone have a good week, and looking forward to Ubuntu during the week.
Jinder?
Thanks for having me, everybody. Thanks for putting up with me. Have a good week, guys.
Daniel?
Which one?
Rocco.
You're Daniel too. Daniel, go ahead.
Rocco, thanks again for the stream. Thanks for having us. This has been a lot of fun as usual. Thanks to all the Budgie guys and for all the time they put in on that. It's a great looking distro, regardless of what I have a tendency to do to most distros when I get them. But excellent work. It looks great. Great conversation tonight about everything, and looking forward to Ubuntu. Everybody have a great week.
All right, Paul?
Paul's morphed into something else.
I guess he's busy right now, I guess. Kai, last word.
I'm a little scared for when I pop up on Biddle, but I at least have a plan for the next 4 weeks to get the things I really need to get done for Ubuntu Lumina.
Well, don't be scared, dude. It's just us talking about it, so we'll be nice.
Right, but at the same time, I've put so many hours into this project.
I'm sure.
I'm terrified.
I'm sure.
If not, Walmart's got tissue again. So
wow,
that's good.
Wow, that's wrong.
Bruh.
Okay, Daniel too. Last word.
All right. Thanks everybody for having me, and It was great being back again. Looking forward to Ubuntu. Maybe I can set up some of that Ansible stuff to make it even seamlesser. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Well, I talked to Dustin before the show, and he had said to me about sitting down with me and going over it. But man, that kind of stuff is invaluable if you even learn it and just even put it out there as far as like a tutorial on how to do it. Man, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Vince, last word, brother.
Cheers, Rocco, and cheers to your helpers too. There's Bill and you, Joe. Awesome job, guys. I'll see you guys next week, but don't forget during the week to come hang out with us on Telegram and Discourse. And apparently there's an IRC. Does anyone use IRC?
There is an IRC.
But it's on the website.
It is on the website. There's all kinds of things on the website. Channel. But there aren't many people that use it, so just saying. All right, Thomas, last word.
Well, thank you for allowing me back on the stream again this week. The issues that people have with Linux getting started, we all have them, and it's how we learn. I remember hearing someone talk about how if you didn't rm-rf / your drive at least once, you would never learn not to do that unless you really hated a distro for no apparent reason or just want to see the world burn. Kai, don't worry about having your own distro reviewed. They did it for me too. It was a lot of fun, and you'll get a lot of great feedback, I promise. And they're nice about it too.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right, Farron, last word.
You know, back on the subject of Windows Me, it's like people say that Windows Vista and Windows 8 were the worst Windows versions. Clearly, they don't know Windows Me existed.
Farron, we were supposed to end this on a positive note because of all the
Windows
horror
Me
stories,
was-
and you want to end it on ME?
Windows Me was so bad they don't even recognize it as an
Windows
operating system.
Mistake Edition.
Yes, that's pretty much what it was.
Rocco, you want a positive note, though.
On a positive note, yeah, like Thomas said, don't be afraid about it. You'll get some good feedback out of it that will come in useful.
Yep.
I've been there myself once or twice, or maybe 3 times. I forget how many times exactly.
Yep.
Thank you.
What's your positive note, Bill?
Oh, I totally forgot that there are some people that named Cubicle Nate and Eric Adams who do a podcast. And they took a break, and now they're back with DLN Extend.
Dude, I was so excited when I looked at the Pocket Casts on my phone at work, and there was a new DLN Extend. It was like immediately up on the list, and started playing it. It was really good to see him back.
I was looking forward to seeing Computer Kid tonight because I wanted to ask him about my
About
Endeavor
Arch?
OS install.
Yeah, why is it not Arch?
Yeah, you telling me it's not Arch?
Get off my
Rocco,
lawn.
Get off my lawn.
Don't you have an announcement for a Linux Spotlight next week?
Oh, yeah, you're right, Bill. I do. That is a positive note. Linux Spotlight this week was, obviously Leo Chavez, and that was a great conversation. I don't mean to sound down about it. I'm more down about the audio than anything.
It's a little bit one-sided. Oh, too soon? Sorry.
Oh, wow.
It's too soon, dude. Too soon.
And that was a great episode.
That really was.
That was a great episode.
So if you want to go listen to that episode, just go to linuxspotlight.com because I did redirect linuxspotlight.com and .org to the Fireside audio only of it. So you go to linuxspotlight.com and you can listen to it there, and it'll be primo. But this week, Wednesday, I sit down with none other than Joe Resington and interview him and talk to him about his Linux journey and pretty much everything else, all of his podcasts that he's doing, what he's currently doing, maybe what he's currently working on. And that was a great conversation. I'm in the middle of editing it right now. So again, Wednesday at 6 a.m., that'll release. I personally want to thank, again, Dustin for showing up and David for all of his work and all of the devs that work on Ubuntu Budgie for all of the great work they did. This was a fantastic release, and I loved it. So there you go. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to add. We got in 2 weeks, we will have Diddle Europe. So, yeah, this week we're going to try out Ubuntu 2004. And other than that, we will see you next week. But until then, long live Linux.
Bye.
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 See, I can't hit stop recording